Okay, so welcome everybody to today's presentation. Just a few housekeeping things as we go along. If you could just put yourselves on mute just as the presentation is going on, and then feel free, you could unmute yourself to ask any questions that you might have for Teresa. And if you feel more comfortable and want to use a text chat, you could do that also. And so without any further ado, I wanted to welcome our guest speaker today, Teresa McNeely. She's the founder of Do the Workbooks. She's been in business since 2015, and she is located in Huntsville. So we thank you, Teresa, for coming in or for Zooming with us today and learning more about this topic.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori, and thank you to Pero for allowing me to speak with your audience. I've been involved with Pero for, I think, just over a year now, and I found it really supportive. It's such a supportive group. Whenever they do a local event, I try to go to it because it's always amazing. So thank you for having me here. I'm just going to share my screen. Whoa, this looks different. Okay. Can you see my
Yeah.
logo?
Yep, we can see. Yep.
Okay, something was just, I didn't like, there was a window there that popped up, but it disappeared. So, yeah, so yes, if anyone has any questions, can we save that to the end? Because I haven't timed how long this presentation is, so I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm going to try not to speak so fast because I really tend to do that. But if you do have any questions as I go along, maybe just type it in the chat so you don't forget it. But yeah, we'll get to those at the end. I just want to make sure I go through everything that I wanted to talk to you about today. So, yeah, so my first thing that I want to talk about is why write. So obviously my company really focuses on hand to paper, hand to heart connection and writing with, with your hand, not on a digital device. Um, so why write? And I think it's really important for if you're offering a service or you have a message to share, to have another way of sharing your message. You know, it's very common now to teach your message and have webinars like this or have an online course. But how about other ways that you can share your message? And one of those ways is, of course, a workbook or a worksheet to share your message. And it allows your participant to do the work with you. So when you're writing a workbook, you're not just the author, but they are also the contributor to your book as well, because they are also writing it as well. So it's an interactive way to engage with your audience. And I like to say, you're interacting with them while you're sleeping because they're staying up late at night doing your workbook. Or whatever time it is. So it's an asynchronous tool for learning. And again, Do the Workbooks is really an advocate for getting away from tech. I have this saying that I like to say is disconnect from tech, reconnect with a self-check. So just taking a break with technology, not that there's anything wrong with the technology, because it's a wonderful thing. We're here using it now and it's glorious. But just sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming. It's overstimulating. It can be very distracting. So what better way to engage with your audience with just them and your workbook, pen to paper, no phone, no distractions. Even if you have a workbook that's a digital workbook, there's so much tendency to, oh, you get a notification on your phone or your laptop or whatever the digital device they're using. There's that risk involved. And I also like to say that sometimes we don't need anything extra. We just need introspection. Sometimes the answer is within us, and we don't need to search it up or ask a friend or, find a YouTube video about it. I mean, obviously, there are times when we need to have guidance and support and seek help, but there's also times when we can just find the answer within. And that's what I believe a workbook or a worksheet can really help untap with your audience. So whatever your message that you want to share, you're helping them, you're guiding them, you're providing some of the tools, some of the resources in your workbook, and then they're coming up with the solutions for themselves and integrating it into their life. And that's another thing that I want to say, that a workbook is an integrative tool. Neuroscience research totally, there's studies behind it that writing with your hand to paper. There's cognitive benefits, there's the tactile benefits, memory benefits, and also visual benefits that you get from, a physical book. And then, so like I said in my slide here, like a workbook, we're inviting collaboration. So the participant is writing with you. And then I just want to take you along what I call the writing journey, or what is like the pen to paper experience. Or, sometimes I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, my business is just creating worksheets. Like, what am I doing? What is this? But there's really so much more to it. And I discovered this when I was journaling myself. I was taking the time, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I journaled this, and this is what I came up with. So, I start with a worksheet, like that is like the foundation, just one sheet of paper. You're sharing some of your message, and you're allowing your participant to share the experience with you. And so we start with the worksheet, but sometimes we need a little bit more than that. So we expand that worksheet into a workbook. And I always say a workbook is just several worksheets packaged into, a nice little book. So we have a worksheet in the beginning, that's the foundation. Then we expand it into a workbook. And now we're really getting your participant to read and write through your workbook. They're taking the time to slow down, read what, half the book that you've written, and write the rest of the book. So they're taking the time to read and write, and it's slowing them down. Reading a book it takes a lot of time. Sometimes people just like watching quick videos, but let's slow people down and slowly absorb your content and engage with you by, maybe there's a prompt or something that you can ask them along the way. And then there's several pages in your workbook. So it's a practice. It's something that they have to continually go back to. It's not something that they might finish in one day. Maybe they'll have to pick it up the next day or the next week. Or maybe it's something that they do monthly, or it's a reoccurring thing. So it's something that they'll always come back to. And again, like the other thing I said, it's without distraction. And I think that's like my key thing here is, obviously there's going to be distractions with, where you're writing. Maybe you're writing in a busy room. There's going to be distractions there. But it's not like being on a device where you're really tempted to have distractions come to you. And then without this distraction, you're getting the more of their chance to reflect and to contemplate what you're writing and what they're thinking about. It's getting them to do some deep thinking, taking the time, a slow practice for deep thinking and reflection. And then once they do this reflection, they're, not only connecting with you, and they're connecting because of what you're sharing, but they're connecting with themselves. They're realizing things that they might not have thought of. They just have a better connection with themselves. And with this connection with themselves, they are more self-aware. They're building up their awareness to whatever it is, the message that you're sharing. There's the topics for workbooks are obviously endless, but whatever your message is, they're having more awareness to that. And then with this awareness, they're being a lot more mindful. And throughout their day, they're thinking about it. Or, when something comes up, they have that on their mind. And then with that mindfulness, they can now take inspired action. Now they can take whatever it is. If it's a small action or a big action, that action will now be a lot more mindful. And so these are the words that I just came up with. Started with a worksheet, then it's a workbook. We write without distraction. Then we can get to reflect, connect, self-awareness, mindfulness, and then we can take action. And that I tried to explain this to someone before, and they really understood, what the benefits of a workbook is now, or a worksheet, because of this, I don't know, I call it like the mind, body, and soul connection. So I hope that encourages you to want to write yourself or journal or engage with your audience and have them write. So right now I'm going to take you through the workbook blueprint. This is a worksheet that I created in a worksheet mastermind that I host. And I had a lot of information in here in this worksheet. So I ended up having all the information on one sheet. And then on the next sheet is the worksheet part, where it's the interactive part where you can fill in, check mark, explore your thoughts. and really engage with the content that I'm teaching you. So this workbook blueprint is to help you figure out what you want your workbook to be about, all the way through publishing your workbook and creating that workbook community of your own. Okay, so the first step for the workbook blueprint is the workbook idea. So that's where, you figure out, just the general idea. What do you want your workbook to be about? Start with an idea. What is the message that you're sharing? What are you offering to your audience? Maybe you have a system, maybe you have a process that you want to outline and you want them to follow. Maybe there's a plan or an activity, or you have questions to share. What is your intention and what is your message for your workbook? I also like to say that there's 5 different types of workbooks that I've generally seemed to follow. So there's like the planner. So maybe your workbook is like an agenda where they, take notes on what they want to do every day, or it's something that they would do, every day or every month, or a planner of sorts. Then there's also a tracker, again, where something they're, keeping track of. Maybe they're tracking their meals or their water intake or mindfulness or gratitude, or something that they're tracking and that they're always going back to recording whatever it is that you're sharing. Then, of course, there's a journal, which is more of like a place for them to write. Maybe there's journal prompts. There's a little bit more space for them to explore their thoughts. Obviously, the type of workbooks that I do are not just blank pages, but they're guided content journals. So there's some sort of interactive component where the author is sharing something and the participant is engaging with that message. And maybe there's a system. So maybe you have, a process that you follow, and the workbook is several worksheets that take you through that process. And then there's also an activity book, which is sometimes I like to think it's the fun book because it allows you to explore and creativity. But it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a fun book. It's just different ways of engaging with your audience. Maybe there's puzzles or questions or different kinds of interactive components, like, it could be a coloring book or just a different ways of sharing your ideas with them. And then maybe your workbook is based off another book that you've already written. Maybe you already have like a written book that you have, and you want to convert that book into a workbook. So maybe that's the idea for your workbook. Or maybe you have a course, or you're teaching a seminar, or you have a workshop, and then you want to convert that speaking event into a workbook. So there's that type of way that you can approach how you create a workbook. And then, of course, I also like to say that when you start your idea for your workbook, allow that process to grow and evolve. Your idea may change. A lot of times people come to me thinking that they want a planner, but then they realize, oh, it could, be a tracker, or, there could be other elements to your workbook that you can incorporate. So it's just something that could evolve from what you initially thought of. So it's something that you should, you'll go back to this step regularly throughout the process, throughout this 9-step workbook blueprint. So on the back of this worksheet, this is where you would write your simple intention for your workbook. And then step 2 is your workbook content. So I always like to start with, what are the three basic things that you want to share, and then expand on that. So come up with 3 different topics that you want to mention in your workbook or that you want to cover, and then expand on those 3 points. So you have the first point, expand those 3 points, and then your second point, expand on those 3 times, and then just keep going to come up with an outline or like a table of contents for your workbook, and just all the information that you in point form, what you want to share. And then I get asked as well as, well, how much information do you need in a workbook? And it really depends on, where your workbook is going to be used. If it's a workbook that, that they're using with your seminar or your online course, or it's with a speaking event, you probably don't need as much content because you're going to be sharing that information in the video or in your speaking event. So maybe your workbook is just the interactive components and you don't need all that backup material. So your workbook could be a little bit smaller, or it's just those worksheets. But then oftentimes, if you're not going to be there, if you're not going to be with them and they're going to be working it on their own, then sometimes you need that supportive material, and you'll include some, content and, just some other information that you want to include to back up what you're trying to share. So it depends on, where your workbook will be used, will depend on how much content you want. So again, on this point, we just figure out what information you want to include, come up with a table of contents or an outline, just simple points of what you want to include in your workbook. And then for the step 3 is the workbook worksheet. So like I said before, a workbook is just several worksheets packaged into one. So when you're thinking about, and then maybe your workbook is just like one worksheet just repeated several times, that like a tracking sheet, and then you just have it several times so that it, you have a workbook for like 6 months or a year. So it could be just a repeated worksheet to create that workbook, or maybe you have a workbook that has different worksheets and every worksheet is the same, or maybe there's like a system of worksheets where everyone's different for a chapter and then it's repeated. So maybe chunks are repeated. And then it's really important, this is probably the most important step, is, how do you make your worksheet and in turn your workbook an interactive one? Because your worksheet will have your content plus that activity, that engagement, however you want your participant to interact with your workbook. So I say there's 9 different tools that you can use to make your worksheet or workbook interactive. So maybe it's a writing prompt. Maybe you ask like a simple question and they give you a simple answer and they just write it down. Maybe there's a reflection question. So this is a type of question where there's a lot more space for them to write. It's an open-ended question. It allows more time and space for them to reflect on that answer and to think about it and to explore the ideas and write those thoughts down. So writing prompts are shorter, reflection questions are a little bit longer. And then there's also guided exercises. So maybe you're asking multiple questions that would lead to that ultimate answer that you're really looking for. So it's asking several questions, whether it's a writing prompt or, several questions to lead to an ultimate answer. So writing prompts, reflection questions, guided exercises. Then there could be just notes or journal pages. So these are just blank pages where they can write notes or have free flow thoughts. And then maybe you're offering them checklists or multiple choice. So, a checklist or a multiple choice, you're writing all the options down and they're selecting which ones they want to pick from, or it's just a way to get lots of information out for them to just do a simple, check. Then there's also graphic diagrams. Maybe you don't just want words on a page. Maybe there could be visuals, and maybe it's visuals that they draw themselves, or maybe you have a drawing and they're adding to it, or maybe it's just like an infographic or a diagram to explore or to explain your message. Instead of written form, it's a diagram, and that's engaging with them because they're not just reading, they're looking at a picture to explain it. Then you can also engage with, tables or charts. So, laying out your information in a systematic, organized way into a chart or a table, and having them, maybe they're filling out the chart, or maybe the chart is already filled out and they're adding to it. So charts and diagrams is another way to make it an interactive component. And then there's also fill-ins, fill in the blanks. So maybe there's a statement and there's a blank spot for them to write their answer, just like a form or an application form. So maybe it's just a fill in the blank option. So those are 9 different ways that I commonly use to create an interactive and engaging worksheet. And then, like I said, like a workbook can be a repeated worksheet. So like maybe a tracker or planner. Could just be a repeated worksheet packaged into one workbook, or maybe your workbook is several different worksheets and more like an activity book or a systems book. And then again, like the important thing is to remember to invite collaboration. So you're writing half of the content and they're writing the other half. So making sure to have that dialogue with them, or a conversation, or a collaborative participation with them. So like I said, I host these worksheet masterminds that focus just on this part, on creating a worksheet. And we explore why we want to create a worksheet, what that worksheet is about, how to make it interactive, and then of course, wowing your worksheet, how to make it look its best, and laying it out in whatever design program that you would want to use. So on the flip side of this worksheet, I have all those 9 tools, and you check which one you want to use, and figure out where you would want to use it in your workbook. And then we have the workbook manuscript. So after your outline is, you have all your outline written up, then you can expand on your content and, obviously write your book. This is done in conjunction with your worksheet. Sometimes you can just write your workbook and then write the book, and then you'll extrapolate some ideas to get your worksheet in. Sometimes you'll have your worksheet, you know what you want your worksheet to be about, and then you have to expand on that and write some information to go along with your worksheet. So these are done together. And then it's really important, obviously, to have another set of eyes on your manuscript, somebody to read it. I also like to say somebody that's not in your industry, so that if you're explaining something, you can have that person see if they understand what you're sharing. Of course, you'll need like an editor, somebody to structurally, structure your workbook and your copy, somebody to do the grammar checking, of course, and then somebody to proofread it as well. So on this section, you're enlisting who's going to help you with that, who's going to be, your other set of eyes for your workbook. And then the workbook design. This is something that I always like to do right in the beginning as well. Like before you even work on anything on the inside of your workbook, what is the outside of your workbook going to look like? Like start with the cover. Just kind of have that visual of how you want your workbook to look. I always like to tell people to grab a book off their bookshelf and see if it's the right size, like how big you want it, the trim size, and even how heavy you want your workbook. Because maybe you don't want a big, heavy, a course book. Maybe you just don't want something light, or, really pick up a book and figure out if this is the type of workbook that you want. And then think about how you want your cover to look, and then mock it up and wrap that cover with that book that you grabbed and like put it on your shelf. So it will just like trigger you to like encourage you to finish that workbook. Because trust me, like ask any writer who writes a book, even myself, it's a long process. It's something that, well, it depends on how big your workbook is, but it's something that, might get pushed off to the side because you have other projects. So it's really helping you. Seeing your workbook look like it's done will really help you motivate you to get it done. So you want to think about, what colors do you want your book to be as soon as you see it, before anybody opens it. Maybe it will match your brand colors, or even think about what kind of feeling you want people to have when you see their book, or what do you want to feel when you see your book? What's that feeling? So make sure that your book, when you're seeing it, has that feeling emphasized with the colors you pick, or the picture that you have, the visually that you have on the cover. What feeling, what mood do you want your audience to get when they see your workbook? So the colors, the trim size, and then even how many pages is your workbook? So this is where you would describe your workbook, what it looks like, and then again, who will help you to do that. So then we have publishing your workbook. So who will print it, who will distribute it, and who will sell it. So obviously, with print on demand, so many people are becoming authors these days because it's so accessible and available to everyone. So maybe you're just printing it yourself. Maybe you have a home printer and you could just print the worksheets off yourself, or maybe you're taking it to a print shop to print it for you, or maybe you're using a print on demand service. How are you going to print your workbook? Maybe you're publishing it with, maybe you're publishing it online, so using a print on demand supplier, or maybe you're using, like somebody like me, an assisted self-publisher, a hybrid or partnership publisher who will help you with that. Or maybe you have a traditional publisher that you are going to use for publishing your workbook. And then distributing it. So how are you gonna, show, how are people gonna get access to your book? So maybe again, it's doing it yourself. Maybe you're gonna have events, seminars or workshops, events that you go to that you can personally, physically give copies to at your events. Maybe you have a local bookstore that you can sell it at, or maybe they're just going to be sold online, Amazon or any online book retailers. So this step is really trying to figure out who's printing it, who's going to publish it, and who's going to distribute it for you. And then this is where you write who's going to support you with that. And then your workbook participant is, again, this is something that should be done really in the beginning. When you see my chart, there's actually an arrow going right to the beginning. So the workbook participant is something that you look at right from the get-go. So it's who is your workbook for, and who's your target audience. And then again, like I mentioned, this is done at the start and something that you can review regularly as well. Something that you want to review often, because maybe you decide when you're writing your workbook that you're realizing, oh, this is not for the person you originally intended it for, and it's actually for somebody else. There's could be some clarity around that. So something that you want to look at is describing who it is for, where they are, like where do you find these people, where are they hanging out, describe that, and then how will you reach them? Again, like are they available to you online? Are you going to be meeting them in person? How will you reach them? So this part is focusing on your workbook participant and describing that, who they are. And then we have workbook invitations. So you commonly see this at the end of a book. You see, their bio, or you see other offers that they have. This can happen at the end of the book. So what other products or services are you offering that you can, through your workbook, allow them to know? Because maybe your workbook is your first connection point with them. Maybe that they bought your workbook online and this is their first time meeting you. At the back of the book, they could read your bio and see other things that you have to offer that they might be interested in. Or maybe you have other courses that are similar, that are relevant to your workbook, or something different. Any events that you can have listed. Maybe you offer consulting, you can have that showcased. Or if you have other books, then you can highlight those other books. I also like to say, you often find that at the end of the book, but I also say to invite people to you at the beginning of the book. So as soon as you open their book, there's like a little welcome message, and you can invite them to your social media or however you want them to contact you. Maybe it's just your website or your email. So again, it's an invitation for them to meet you and engage with you and to find you. And then the workbook community. So again, this is all about connection. The workbook is a tool for you to connect with your audience, but it's also a tool for them to connect with themselves. It's all about connection. And like I said, it's like a self-reflective tool, a personal assessment. And then, so how can you be constantly, maybe not constantly, how can you be often engaging with them? So maybe your workbook, you can have a community around that workbook. Maybe you can have like a Facebook group or a page where you ask questions or a conversation with them to get information from them, or they can ask you questions. It's just a way to further engage with you. And it's a continuous process too. how you market your workbook. Marketing your workbook starts at the beginning, because you want to, tell people that you're doing it. It will also help you to finish it. Your book, the launch of your book is a process that you always connecting with people. When you're advertising your book, when it's done, it's something that you're always going to do once you have your workbook, because if you stop sharing your workbook, then your workbook will, could stop as well. People won't know about it and people won't pick it up anymore. So it's a continual process, a continual connection point that you have to make with your audience. And then I just want to end with, I think everyone's heard that a book is a business, is like a business card, or like a book is like a business card on steroids, because it's a lot more, obviously it's a lot more paper, or it's a lot more information. But I also like to say that a workbook is a business and a community, because it's that interactive component. Not only you're interacting with them one-on-one with your workbook, you're creating a larger community. A book is a business, because it has its own working parts, its own development process, its own marketing, its own revenue stream. It's a workbook is just like creating another part of your business. And it's that connection point with your audience. It's that conversation, that dialogue, that back and forth participation, that back and forth exchange. And it's like a partnership. So that was my workbook blueprint. I covered that all in half an hour. That was pretty impressive. Sorry if I blabbed on that so quickly. I didn't think I was going to go through that in 30 minutes, but so if you want to download the workbook blueprint, I could put the link in the chat. There's also a QR code that you can get that. Oh, do I not have access to chat because I'm sharing my screen?
No, you should have access to it.
How do I do that then?
At the bottom there where it says
There
more.
it is. I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so copy. I'll copy this in the chat so you can get yeah, that's a link to my blog actually, but there should be a link in there to download the workbook blueprint. So then, like I said, one sheet is all that information that I just blabbed to you. And then the next sheet, on the next side, it's a 2-page worksheet. So on the next side, you have that interactive component where you can write, your side of the story. Because again, I wrote half the information and you're writing the other half. Yeah, so that was that. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if anybody has any questions, feel free, you can unmute yourself and you can ask, or like I said before, you could, if you feel more comfortable, want to use a text chat, you could do that as well.
Yeah. So I see there was a comment here. Excellent sheets, really well laid out, lovely to look at and inviting to write on. That is like what I love. Like, imagine getting a worksheet that you would love to write on. A lot of people, if you make it too pretty, people are afraid to write on. I've had to overcome that fear, but so you just tell them, we'll buy 2 workbooks. So one that you look at and one that you write in. Yeah, so is it Cindy? Do you have a question?
Yes, this was wonderful. Thank you. I actually did that. I created a puzzle book. I do word search puzzles, and I made a puzzle book all round puzzles, circle puzzles.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it was so beautiful. People did not want to mark it up because I had art. It really was, and that was what I heard consistently.
Oh,
and it's like, no, please mess it up, because that's the whole point, right?
yeah.
So I have an understanding of you want it beautiful, but you want people to use it. Otherwise, it's of no purpose. It's of no purpose. So yeah, there was a lot of things in there. The 9 elements, I didn't get a chance to mark them all down, but they're on the blueprint, right?
Yeah, they are on the blueprint. Yes. So it's writing prompts, reflection, questions, guided exercises, note or journal pages, checklists, multiple choice, graphics, table and charts, and fill in the blanks. But yeah, it's on the blueprint.
Okay, beautiful. Another question I have, you had mentioned at some point about working with you or doing a hybrid sort of thing. If there comes a point where someone's ready to do a project like this, could we work with you? Is this what's the words I'm looking for? They're all going away right now. Could we hire you or contract you to help us create it and launch it, etc.?
Yeah, so that is what I do. Like most people, when they come to me, they don't even have anything written and they just have an idea in mind. So sometimes I help with that whole part, like what is your workbook about? What kind of content you can have? Obviously, I might not be the expertise in what they're sharing, but I help develop the workbook as well, and then design it as well. So I do the development and design of workbooks, and I've helped people self-publish as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. And I have another question. You're still sharing screen.
Do I want to stop? Yes.
And so you're in Ontario?
Yeah, I'm in Muskoka. I'm in Huntsville.
Okay, I've been there many, many times.
Yes.
Okay.
It's lovely. I just wanted to comment though about your comment about, because that's an interesting thing about not making your worksheet or workbook too pretty because you want people to write in it. Because I was actually recently given a workbook to work in through myself for a personal issue that I had. And at first, when I looked at this workbook, I was like, this is not something that I want to write in. It was very plain, boring. It just had like just a simple writing prompt in like a basic font and then a blank page. And I was like, well, this is boring. But sometimes that is very refreshing. Like, I thought it was a workbook that I wouldn't want to do, but it just created a different perspective for me on working through that workbook. So sometimes you might want to, have there's a fine line between making something really beautiful that nobody would want to touch and something making it really raw where it's like, I don't care, I'll mess it up and just write in it. So that's an interesting point that you made. But like I said, then they could buy 2 books, one for writing in, one for looking in.
Yeah, 2, they're small.
Yeah. Does somebody else have a question? Sorry, I don't know whose hand was up first.
I think, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I think Maishi, sorry,
Maheshi.
that question?
No worries.
Maishi.
Hi. Well, first of all, you live in Muskoka. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I wish I did. And the second, the actual question was, I'm on your website,
Okay.
but what should I search for? Like, I'm on the blog. What should I search for to find the
Blueprint? If you scroll down, there should be like I hope I gave the right link. There should be, if you scroll down, there should be on that. Oh gosh, let me see if that direct link. Yeah. There's a connect and get the workbook blueprint.
Okay. Connect.
Yeah. So write your name, email, and then it will, I think it should
okay,
automatically get sent to you like right away.
Right.
So I hope that works.
Sweet. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see Claire had her hand up. Sorry. Go ahead, Claire. Sorry.
Yeah. Unmute. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Hi, thank you. That was very interesting. I loved it. I worked with several nonprofit organizations, and I kind of have several ideas of how worksheets could be integrated into what we do.
Yeah.
Do you have any experience with, or do you think it's possible or useful to have a sort of workbook or worksheets, just individual worksheets, but that would be used collectively, either during a group session or individually, but like everybody does, and then we kind of put everything in common kind of thing, or?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. So is it a workbook that each person will use, or are you saying a workbook that multiple people will use? Did I not understand the question properly?
Well, it's more like I'm just like trying to see what can exist in this kind of setting. So either,
yeah,
I was thinking more like everybody has their own, but they work on it together, but I think having just one that everybody shares would be kind of cool for some.
Yeah, that was just
something
like
else.
that was just an interesting idea too. I mean, it could be like a collaborative book. You know, you see those books that there's different authors writing in their different stories. So maybe you're making a workbook that has, you know, all these different inputs. I mean, obviously, of course, there's going to be, you can have a worksheet or workbook on any topic, especially for nonprofits, depending on, you know, if it's a message that you want to share and you need people to, you know, think about on like, and that's what I'm saying, what a workbook is. It's something that they could take away and think about on their own. The other great thing about having a workbook I didn't even mention was when you're taking the time to, you know, read whatever messages you're sharing, and then the audience, the participant is taking the time to write it, then they're better able to share their thinking because they've taken the time to write it down. So a workbook is such a great tool for a group. You know, even like I created my own workbook for book clubs, and it's to take notes on the books that you read. And it's, you know, because oftentimes I will read a book and I'll totally forget what lessons I've learned, even if like the previous chapter or the previous page, I totally forgot what I read. So I take the time to write down my notes so that at the end of the book, and when we're meeting as a book club or at the end of the week or how often you meet, you can remember those points and then you can share that message. And that's a powerful thing. Not only is it powerful to write, you know, your thoughts or reflections down, but then when you can share those thoughts and reflections to a group, like that's even more, yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have a link to that book, the book club book that you were just talking about?
I can show it to you right now. It's called My Book of Books. I launched it last year, which is crazy because I've been doing this since 2015, and it was just last year that I did my own workbook. So that's what I was saying. I know how hard it is to write a book because, gosh, it is hard to do. So it's like it's for writing. It's ideally for nonfiction books. And I made it like a coloring book too. So there's coloring pages in it. There's action prompts. You can write notes, and it's
for like one per book, or like you can have your.
It's for 6 books. So it's a workbook that's there's like there's a couple of, sorry, I'm not really showing this, but this is like for one book. Pages. It's for one book, and then it's just repeated 6 times. I wanted it for, sorry?
No, go ahead, finish.
I wanted it for 12 books because I wanted it for a whole year, but I was like, that's a lot of reading in 1 year, and that's a really big book. So I made it for 6 months, and then there's like a tracking calendar too, so you can keep writing. And then there's quotes in between. There's like some content, you know, to guide you how to use it.
Cool.
But if you're on my website
with the University of Toronto alum group, so I'll definitely recommend your book to them. Can you drop a link there, like to?
Oh yeah, what is my link? Oh my goodness.
And also, do you have a digital version? Because a lot of people like to like color in their iPads and stuff like that.
I do not, just because
that's the next step.
People have been asking me, but like that's my issue with my business, because I'm really trying to promote pen to paper.
Yeah, pen to paper, but not in printed. Like I'm one of those people too. I need to like write with my hands. Like I'm a more like what do you call tech? No. Anyways, there's a method. Kinesthetic, yes, a kinesthetic learner. But however, I always lose books and lose paper. I always lose them. So I have the books on my iPad or my what do you call those devices? Okay, I'm losing words too. But anyway, so I would write onto the device.
Right. You write
so you know what? I'm not saying like mouse and keyboard kind of one, but
like a stylus.
Yes, a digital version of the same book.
Right. Yes.
It'd be awesome to have see something like that, because I have a ton of notebooks, workbooks I start And then halfway through, I'm like, yeah.
I get you that. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool, thank you, but definitely send me the link.
Yeah, here is the link copy. Oops. Did it get sent? There. That's a link to my like splash page of how the workbook looks and information about it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for joining. And I hope I hear from everybody at some point.
Cindy, do you have a question or?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, go ahead.
I'm just trying to make sure I get this link. I hear what you're saying. It's kind of counterintuitive to do what you're doing digitally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really honor that. Because doing things on paper is radically different, but there's a whole generation you got to try and lock into.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's why I feel like I have to be firm on this because yeah, there's a whole generation that is, just automatically picks up their phone or digital device and not like even my daughter now, she's doing her homework on her iPad. Yeah, she has an iPad, like it's crazy.
Also, it's about like not using paper too much too, right?
Pardon?
It's also about not using paper too much too, right? Like since we started doing like the don't use plastic straws, Anyway, sorry to jump in.
That's so true too. You don't want to waste paper. Oh my goodness.
But it's not a waste, it's a keepsake, right? It's something. Anyways, that's not my question, but I just I do a podcast, and this is tying into some of the ideas that I have for the community that I want to start integrating. And so when you get ideas and they're just coming at you so fast, it's hard to put a sentence together. So I don't know if this is something you've ever done in that regard, and that it would be something that could sort of be collaborated on.
Sorry, so you mentioned you have a podcast and you want to collaborate something with a
Well, I wanted a workbook, this type of concept. Sorry, I'm closing my eyes because I have right now, my eyes are very painful and I got to close them often. To do a workbook that could be used within the community, but it's a podcast. The incubus, so to speak, is the podcast, and it's only an audio podcast.
Right.
So,
okay, so that would be an interesting tool to have for your podcast, to have a workbook to go along with it.
Yeah.
What do you talk about in your podcast?
Well, we talk about miraculous things. I speak with people from all over the world about how God is moving in them and through them, and just helping them come through real life situations, addictions. One of my guests, their baby was born dead and came back to life without resuscitation. Lots of miraculous things like that. That these are just average everyday people, and these things are really happening in their lives. So yeah, something that would, because having things written down or putting them somewhere and discovering them later is such a gift, right? So, but I don't know if that's something you've ever done. I would really like to have that conversation. I don't want to monopolize time right now, but I just wanted to ask if.
Yeah, well, sure. Just if you want to just reach out to me, if you have my website, you can there's my contact form, or you can reach me at do the workbooks. Maybe I'll just write my email, do the
good idea
at gmail.com. Do the workbooks at gmail.com.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'd love to explore that with you.
Okay, very exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you. This was
And I
splendid.
see somebody else is from Huntsville. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Where are you? Where are you? There you are. Nice
Yeah.
to meet you.
Nice to meet
Yeah.
you too. Teresa.
We could be like neighbors.
I know, who knows?
That's awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. This was really, really good. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could just say that if you are interested in creating a worksheet or workbook, I hold worksheet, I like to call it a worksheet mastermind challenge because together in 5 days, we create a worksheet. And like I mentioned before, we talk about the why you want a worksheet, what your worksheet is about, how to make it interactive, and then wowing your worksheet, so making it look its best. I do this worksheet mastermind. I used to do them every month, but now I'm doing them every quarter. So I think the next one is in May 14th. No, May 13th. So, almost 2 weeks. It starts. But if you actually go to my website, I just launched it. It's like my DIY worksheet mastermind. I call it my DIY worksheet workshop, which is the same recordings in the worksheet mastermind challenge that I use. So you can get that for free. And then if you're still interested in the worksheet mastermind challenge, you can do that with me, or we could just talk about your worksheet, however you want to work with me, or just if you just need some eyes or ears. Yeah. And then I also have in September, I'm going to be starting up a workbook workout, which is, again, if you're not just interested in doing a worksheet and are curious about the idea of doing a whole workbook, I am holding a workbook workout in September. I just needed to do it after summer because summer is really busy. So, yeah. Did anyone else have any questions or comments?
Hi, I don't have any questions. I came a bit late while I'm very, very interested in this. So I just asked for the recording. I'll be watching the recording later, and if there is any questions, I'll be reaching out because it's very interesting. I am a kinesthetic person. I know it's the age of AI and the age of digital, but I really love papers. I have so many workbooks now around me that I'm not workbooks, notebooks. And I'm a neurodivergent person. I was diagnosed with ADHD late in my life. Now I'm still young, but late, not as a kid. So I'm navigating this with the world, with like the professional world and my personal life. And I've been doing a lot of reading and find out that I need workbooks. Like I need to have a workbook. I cannot work with digital sheets, especially because I have a background in psychology as well. So I wanted to leverage that into ADHD and maybe have a podcast. I heard Cindy has a podcast, and especially I come from a different community originally. So, and in that community, ADHD is not something that's really, they're not familiar with. So I wanted to give a little bit to that community through presenting ADHD in a different way. So maybe your way of workbooks and sheets may help me. So I'm already in your website right now, and I'll be watching the recording, and I hope that it would be helpful for me. Then I can reach out to you. Thank you so much for this. It's amazing. Thank you.
Welcome. Did you get the link for the workbook blueprint? You did?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Great.
All right. Well,
I know we have time, so.
Well, if there's no other questions, then I just want to say thank you so much for this. I think everybody seemed to get, some great information from it, and maybe could use it towards their businesses and stuff like that. And we'd be happy to have you back again. So thank you so much for providing this information, and thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thank you so much,
Thank you very
Lori.
much.
Thank you, Taro. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.